you should not be the business. The processes and systems should be the business. And if you have the processes and system, the business won't evolve around you.
Hello and welcome back to Prosper. We're thrilled to have you join us for our second season. Now this year, we're shifting our focus slightly while staying true to our core mission. I don't know about you, but I've always been fascinated about these origin stories of entrepreneurs, those remarkable journeys that showcase their beginnings, challenges they faced, and how everything came together for them. It's inspiring to hear how these people navigated obstacles and turned their dreams into reality. In this season, we're excited to invite some of our favorite guests to share their stories as principled entrepreneurs, offering insights into their journeys and the values that drive them. So settle in as we embark on a new chapter together, and let's discover the powerful narratives that shape the world of entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Andreas Widmer, joined as always by my colleague, Rebecca Currie. Today, we welcome to the show one of our board of advisors here at the Sioka Center, Robert Tunmire. Robert has more than 44 years of experience in the franchise industry and was a longtime executive vice president of Neighborly, that's formerly known as the Dwyer Group, and was president and CEO of Neighborly, the Dwyer Group, and president of Mr. Rooter Corporation, which is one of Neighborly's companies. He led the franchise development team and trained new franchisees, so he is the man you want to talk to and hear from if you're interested in franchising.
A warm welcome to Prosper, Robert. Later in the show, we're going to talk to you as well about your conversion, about your work with the Heroic Men apostolate. But first, when you were in town about a month or two ago, at lunch, you told us this great story about your start when you were just a teenager. I would love to have you tell us about that, because that seems almost exotic to us today when we don't allow teenagers to do anything.
Yeah, it was quite an adventure. It's not something that I, necessarily recommend to a lot of people. But we moved back to Texas. My dad was Marine Corps for 20 years. I grew up in California, North Carolina, but Grandma was born and raised here in Waco, Texas, and so was Dad. And he quit high school and joined the Marines when he was 17. And so I grew up moving around all the time, moved to Texas after he got out, and started high school here. And just by coincidence, I was in the same class as Don Dwyer's oldest daughter, Donna. And at the end of I've always worked. Between my freshman year and sophomore year of high school, I actually worked 2 jobs from 6 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon at a hotel, washed dishes and everything. And then at another restaurant from 5 to 11 at night. And did that throughout the summer. So I've always been a worker. And so at the end of my sophomore year of high school, it was on a day off from my job, and Donna's dad needed a hand, and she gave him my parents' phone number. And he called me and said, "Hey, Robert, Donna gave me your number. She says you're a worker. I need a hand for a day." Had no idea what he was doing. I mean, absolutely he said, "Meet me at my office. Here's the address." So I hopped on my motorcycle, went over there. I was 16 years of age. I remember this so clearly. So I go to his office, and there's this beautiful Cadillac sitting out there. And I go inside, introduce myself. And he says, "Okay, come with me." And he says, "Hop in this car." And I'd never been in a Cadillac before. It was just, we didn't have Cadillac growing up. And so anyways, he takes me over to a job and said, "Okay, your job's going to be moved." He was just starting a carpet cleaning and dyeing company. And your job's going to be move the furniture around and clean the edges of the carpet. He says, "But what we're going to do is we're going to pay you 10% of what we do today. We're not going to pay you by the hour." I'm like, wow, okay, that's intriguing. And so I worked all day for him and made some good money. And I thought, phew, I can do this all summer. And so I said, "I'll quit my job, Don, and I'll come to work for you all summer." He said, "Okay." So I really hated to do that to my other employer. I'd been there for a year and a half, but one of those things. And so I started working as a helper. And after about 30 days, I went to Don and said, Don, I can do this. I don't need to be a helper. I can run a truck. And he goes, you're 16 years old, Robert. What do you mean you can run a truck? Oh, no, I can do this, Don. So I bugged him for a couple of weeks, and he finally said, okay, look, you're going to have to buy a van. You're going to have to get some equipment. We're not going to give you any work. You got to get your own work. I said, fair enough. I literally just worked like a maniac. I made phone calls at night, getting jobs, and at times I would even Lake Belton, which is by Fort Hood, a military base, and I would literally spend the night in my van. I had a cot that I would stretch out. I would take a bath in the lake early in the morning and go to work. And so it was just did it. And before I started back to school, my junior year, I was making like net $400 a week. And I turned 17 in August, and I was sitting there after about 3 weeks of my junior year of high school, and I realized I was making more money than that teacher during the summer. I can't do this for 2 years. So I bugged him for another week or two, and he said, okay, let's meet with your mom and dad. So I went to my mom and dad. And picture being just turning 17, you're a junior in high school, and going to your mom and dad and say, I want to quit high school. I need to borrow $4,000, and I'm moving to Lubbock, Texas, which is about 7 hours from here, which I'd never been to. And my mom and dad, my brother was starting college that year, so they didn't have $4,000. And so they were really great. And I was not an ideal child. Okay. I was out of the box most of the time, but they said, this is the one thing we can do for you. So they put up their car as collateral and the furniture of the house, and went to the credit union, got a $4,000 loan. And Don said, okay, the franchise is $8,000, give me $2,000 down, and you can use the balance for some equipment and have a little capital. When I say a little capital, I left Waco with $500 in my pocket. I owed the credit union $4,000. I owed Don $6,000. I owed $5,000 on my van. Mom goes to school, signs me out of school, much to the pleasure of the high school, and I drive to Lubbock, Texas. And I'll never forget driving up there. I was literally scared to death, thinking, what have I just done? Think about it. I owed $20,000. I was 17 years old. This is 1975. But I went up there and did exactly what I was trained to do, and was just focused. And I actually built the business up, and I sold it for $25,000 6 months later. And did another one in Wichita Falls, Texas, paid Don $4,000 for it, built it for only 3 months and sold it for $12,000. Then moved to Eugene, Oregon, because I'd been through there when I was growing up. I thought, I'm going to move to somewhere else.
Why did you sell it? Wouldn't it make sense? Wouldn't it have made more sense that once you have something that works, you keep it?
I found out I can make a lot of money flipping these things.
The hard part is to build it, and then you can sell it and somebody pays good money.
Yeah, because people wanted an existing business, and I'm like, heck, I don't care where I live, and I don't care. I know how to go in and start these things. So I made money doing that. And my last one was in Bryan, College Station, Texas, which is about 90 miles from Waco. And I started it in January 77. Ultimately sold it for $100,000 in 1981. I was like 22 then. And I also built a big drive-through car wash, the first full-service car wash in Bryan, College Station, Texas, and a 10-bay self-service car wash. But Don, as we started growing the business out, he said, hey, why don't you come and work with me? Which I really didn't care to do. I'm 22, 23, making a lot of money, but I wanted to know what it was he knew. And I figured the best way to find out was go work with him. Because one thing I found out at a young age is if I could just take people's knowledge at a very young age and apply it, I could do very, very well.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why we're talking to you, because we want to now know what you know. We want to find out.
Why did you even need the franchise? Why wouldn't you just do your own thing?
Well, here's why. Because a franchise gave me a structure, a process, and a system, and a support arm that I felt that I needed. I couldn't afford a mistake. And I always tell people, when you think about a franchise, yeah, you can go open up a business on your own, but the money you're going to spend, the time, and the challenges you're going to face, the cost of a franchise will save you more money than you're ever going to lose.
Yeah. It's because of all these things that when you start a business, you don't think about. It's marketing material, the value proposition, all this kind of stuff that you have to do trial and error. And this guy's already tried it. So in a way, you just have to do it.
Yeah.
He already did the value proposition of cleaning the carpets and everything. So you can just use it. He has the flyers. You just put your number on.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, it was a no-brainer, and it worked very, very well. I think about to go open up a business today is so much more complex. I mean, it was a pretty simple deal in hindsight back in 1975 and 76 compared to today. It is super complex today. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think a franchise is even more important today than it was back in 1975.
How do we tell what's a good franchise to get involved in? Like not everything, I suppose, is a good opportunity. You're the expert. What would you tell us? How do you choose?
Yeah, so a couple things, and I love franchising. I'm a product of the product, and have helped 1,000+ people become franchisees, at least, maybe more than that, and very successful. They've got friends around the world that I've helped become millionaires. And a good franchise is a couple things. Number one is the franchisor financially stable. It's very important that you look at the financials of the person that you're about to invest with. Is this franchisor, do they have the wherewithal to make this work? And most people don't realize this, but most franchisors rarely get past 100 franchises. 100 franchises is kind of a magic mark in the franchising community. I'm not saying you can't invest in a startup franchise company, a startup franchisor. It is just a lot more risky. I would encourage people to look at a franchisor that has no less than 50 locations, preferably 100, and they're financially stable. And you get on the phone and you call multiple franchisors that are in similar sized markets as what you're looking at. Talk to them about the franchisor. Do they really care about you as a person? Do they care about your success? Or do they care about money? And that's a critical issue. And for myself, I always felt like a franchise should be about helping people accomplish their personal financial goals. That's the whole purpose of a franchise. And if a franchisor has that focus, that's probably a good franchisor.
That's something that Neighborly, I believe, was really famous for, was that culture of really helping and lifting everybody up. Can you talk a little bit, because you were the one who trained, if I understand it, you're the one who primarily trained the franchisees. How did you help build that culture?
Yeah, and what I trained the franchisees on was not doing of the franchise. Don taught me a process called Design Your Life, which is really looking at the 6 areas of life: spiritual, family, physical, mental, social, and financial, and taught me a process of how to organize your life around those 6 areas and focus on your objectives in those 6 areas. It's really living life intentionally. And so what I would do is I would teach the first class we taught new franchisees is design your life. It was about a 3-hour class because you think, well, what's the purpose of a business? Help you accomplish your personal financial goals. Well, if you don't know what your personal financial goals are, how is the business going to do that for you? So we taught a very, very specific class on design your life. And ultimately, Dina started teaching it also. Dina Dwyer Owens, who's like my sister. And so that, because Dawn believed, and we continue to believe that, if you teach someone how to live intentionally in those 6 areas of life, then they can know what they need the business to do to accomplish what they want to do in those 6 areas of life. And that's really what I taught. And frankly, when I was 16 years old, that's what Dawn set me down and taught me. And every single year to this day, I lay out those 6 areas of life on what I want to do in those 6 areas this coming year. I do that in December every year.
Robert, is that a proprietary thing, or can people find that online somewhere?
They really can't find it online. The Dwyers own it, actually. They've given me permission to put it out there. And I teach it today. I have the workbooks printed and everything. So we can use it all we want, really.
That'd be interesting for our community. So if you're listening to this and you're interested, show us interest, and maybe we can put something together and actually do a class like that to go through it. I find this highly fascinating. What I find interesting, Robert, and I want you to comment on is he actually said he wants you to have a why before you have a what. And so he wants you to find out why you're trying to do this, and then what are you doing. With the franchising, how much does it matter what it is? Because to me, it's this question of, and before I met you, some 10 or 15 years ago, I wasn't as much aware of your field of franchising as I would be. I lived in Boston. I knew about Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's and so on, and 7-Eleven. So the fact, your field of franchising, which now I see as this huge field, does it matter even what it is? I mean, does the what matter to you at all, or is it only the why?
Knowing your why is one of the most important things you can do in life. And, if you put it in a Christian perspective, why do you want to live a life, following Jesus? Well, why? I want to get to heaven. And when you think about a franchise, does it really matter if it's a home service franchise? Does it matter if it's retail or restaurant? Not really. As long as it's a solid business model, then you can run it, you can do it. I would not want to be in a retail location. I would not want to be in a restaurant. That's just not my thing. Find something that you can do and do well, and know your why. Because if you know your why, you make much better decisions. You're not going to waste your time. You're not going to waste your money. You're not going to waste your energy.
How quickly, there's so many things I want to ask you. How quickly do you look at, and how quickly did you yourself get employees as you're starting to make this work? We talk about scaling and all that kind of stuff. And the truth is, I mean, you only have 24 hours a day and you can't work 24 hours a day. So you need to scale it to some extent to get enough. And the problem is if it's just you do the selling and the executing and the supplying. So how did that work for you? And is there is that tied into the formula of the company that gives you the?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You you should not be the business. The processes and systems should be the business. And if you have the processes and system, the business won't evolve around you. So, like when I was in Bryan College Station, you know, Don told me, "Well, Robert, you got to quit cleaning carpets. You just got to quit doing that. You got to get other people doing that." And so I said, "Oh, okay." And I thought, "Well, what would I do all day?" you know? And I did figure out what I would do all day. And so, as young as you can, if you can get your mind around, I don't want to figure out how much I can do in a day. I want to figure out how much I can get others doing in a day. That's a little distinction.
Well, you sell and they provide, and they deliver, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Once you get to that point, it's kind of like on the road to financial independence. Financial independence is just getting you in a place where you're not working for your money. Your money's working for you. And the sooner you get to that place, the more things happen.
Say a little bit more about that. I think I know what you mean, but say a little bit more about that for the benefit of listeners.
Yeah. So, when you're starting out, you're working your butt off to earn money, to live some kind of life that you envision for yourself, which is nice. I mean, that's good. But you got to get to a point in your mind, your focus is, I want to get to a point to where I'm not working for my money. I'm not going out there and just earning money. My money, I've put to work and it's working for me. You want to get to that point in life. That's a whole nother topic of how to do that. It's really not all that complicated, believe it or not, but get to a point in life where your money is working for you.
Well, this is great stuff, but let's take a quick break before we continue our conversation.
Hi, I'm Father Bob Gall, Director of the Church Management Program at the Catholic University of America. Are you a Catholic layman, woman, priest, or religious running a beautiful school, parish, or apostolate, wrestling with finance and administrative issues you never imagined when you first answered God's call? Are you striving to build something beautiful for God and His people, but need training in personnel management, fundraising, and managing assets in accord with canon law? Well, the Church Management Program at the Catholic University of America's Business School offers a flexible program for you. Our self-paced online programs will help you and your team get the tools you need to see your mission advance, even beyond your wildest dreams. The Catholic University of America is now accepting applications for the master's degree in church management for those aiming to begin their studies in early 2025. One can also enroll in individual courses or pursue one of our graduate certificates. For more details, find us in the show notes for this episode of Prosper or visit our website, meam.catholic.edu. That's meam.catholic.edu.
Now, I can see that it's actually one of the things we try to teach our students is to never work for money, always have money work for you. Because money makes a great servant and a really bad master.
Yeah.
And of course, you kind of found, this Dina Dwyer is his name?
Dana Dwyer Owens. Yeah, she was Don's youngest.
Who's her dad?
Her dad's name is Don Dwyer.
Don Dwyer. So Don Dwyer, a real blessing in your life, this guy.
Oh, because he helped me rewrite my story. When I met him when I was 16 years of age, and I met Don probably at 16 years of age, I was probably on my way to dead or in jail. I didn't really care which one.
Yeah. And he gave you this first why, which probably leaned a bit more towards the financial and stability why than the spiritual and mental why. But eventually, I know you today as a very strong disciple of Jesus Christ and a man who's fully alive. There was a shift, right, in your Tell me a little bit about how that comes about. Did you sort of go into the material world and say, look, now I have this money, what am I going to do? Is it a bit like when you were working versus managing, where you say, well, what am I going to do all day? Or how did it come about?
Yeah, I wasn't raised churched, didn't go to church. I was never baptized. And in January of 1999, I was about to fly out to Las Vegas. It was a Friday morning toward the end of January. And our home has very high vaulted ceilings. And I was there by myself and our two sons. I was a single dad raising two sons. And I woke up at 3:00 in the morning, and there's this bright figure, a light with a figure in the middle of it. And all it said was Robert. And then my whole body shook violently. I would have passed it off as a dream probably if it wasn't for that. I didn't really think a lot about it. I flew out to Vegas and spoke at a franchise conference of our franchisees. And in the Caesars Forum shops out in Vegas, they had a magic shop. And I'd like to go in there and get some magic tricks for the boys. And right next door to it, there is a art gallery that I bought some art from before. And I was standing there looking at a picture in that gallery, thought, well, that looked really good in my office. And all of a sudden, this thought comes ripping into my mind. You can't spend that money. It's God's money. Now, I'm 40 years of age. I've never had a thought like that in my life. I mean, it was like, what? So I walk out of the gallery and fly on back to Waco. And my assistant, Linda, who'd been with me for a number of years, comes in, who was raised Catholic, oddly enough. And she comes into my office, says, hey, Robert, I went to this church on Sunday. You really ought to think about going. Now, she knew I was not a Christian. She knew I didn't go to church. And so I looked at these three events, her doing that, the art gallery, and that figure saying Robert. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe I should go to church. And so the following Sunday, I went to church. It was Fellowship Bible on 11th and Washington here in Waco, evangelical. And it was a nice experience. The people were friendly. Didn't really get anything spiritually out of it. Not really. It was a nice experience. It wasn't a bad experience. And so I went again the next week, and the associate pastor, his name is Buck Rogers, and he came up to me and says, hey, Robert, we got a newcomers class next week. You ought to look at coming to the newcomers class. So I thought, well, I guess I'm a newcomer. And so before church, I go to this class. It was probably 30 minutes, I don't know, something like that. But I'll never forget sitting in that class. It was like all of a sudden I walked into a pitch black room and someone turned a light on, and I realized I had lived the first 40 years of my life absolutely backwards. I mean, it was literally just that clear to me. And
Wow.
Linda was in church that day, and I sat down next to her and said, Linda, I realized I just lived the first 40 years of my life absolutely backwards. And so after church, I was telling Buck that, because I had no clue what to do with it. I mean, I just like, okay, what do I do with that now? And Buck says, well, Robert, have you ever been baptized? I said, no, never thought about it. And so for the next couple of weeks, he talked to me about baptism and all that. And so I was baptized February 28th, 1999.
Wow, praise God.
So, and just by pure Holy Spirit and God, my wife, who'll be my wife for 24 years now, Kitty, we met during this transition. I met her February 6, 1999, and she happens to be a cradle Catholic. I decided I was going to go through RCIA without the intention of becoming Catholic. I just wanted to go learn. I'm one of these people that, but when I do something, I do it. It's not halfway. And about midway through RCIA, they played this video by Dr. Scott Hahn, The Lamb's Supper. And
you were a goner.
I got it. I mean, it was like, wow, this is the truth. The Catholic Church is the absolute truth. And so I decided I'm going to become Catholic. The problem is I had 2 marriages I had to get annulled, which is quite a process. And so by the grace of God, they were annulled, not in time for Easter, obviously, but I came into the church in October of 2004.
It's beautiful. Did you find the annulment process? Everybody always talks about how, as you say, it's quite the process. But people I talked to have also said that they found it healing, that there were things that they hadn't explored and that they went into the process thinking this is a stupid bureaucratic hoop I have to jump through and I resent it. But as they went through the process, they actually found it healing and helpful.
I would say it was healing, definitely.
That book, The Lamb's Supper, also had a huge impact on me. You did the whole RCIA. You basically probably know the faith better than most Catholics because you did this as an adult. What are some of your other favorite books that you came across?
Yeah, one book that was really, I can't remember who suggested I read it, was Born Fundamentalist, Born Again Catholic. And it was.
Is that Peter Kreeft?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I had one here in my office till recently. I gave another one away, but
actually, Robert, you're the one who introduced me to the book years ago.
Okay, yeah. But I started studying. Once I decided to become Catholic, I started reading the early church fathers and just really dived into the Catholic faith. That's just my personality.
And now you're doing this beautiful ministry, Heroic Men. I was very blessed to be a part of one of the events you did. Can you just...
Yeah, so what happened there is after I became a Christian, like literally within a month, this gentleman was, a good friend of mine, David, who's an attorney. He said, Robert, this guy named Patrick Morley is going to be speaking at Columbus Avenue Baptist Church. You ought to come and hear him. So I'm like, sure. So I went and heard Patrick speak. He wrote this book called Man in the Mirror. And it was really about a great story about a man's life and how God can work through somebody. And Man in the Mirror is probably the largest ministry of men in the Protestant faith. And so over time, Pat and I struck up a relationship because of my franchising background. He asked me if I'd work with them on their ministry a little bit. So I did. And so I got involved with Ministry to Men. So what happened, I was down there at one of their conferences, and this was a couple years after being baptized. And I was in my hotel room. I was reading and praying. God put 2 things on my heart, which was kind of bizarre. He said, get a Man in the Mirror Bible study going in Waco, Texas. And then I want you to get Ministry to Men going in the Catholic Church in the Austin Diocese. Now, first off, I was a businessman. I was not someone to do stuff like that. And I wasn't even Catholic. I couldn't spell Catholic. And all that night, I'm sitting going, God, you're talking to the wrong guy here. You're making a mistake. And so, I had a friend that had a small Protestant church, and I told him about, let's get a Man in the Mirror Bible study going. I didn't tell him about the Catholic part. And he goes, well, if you'll organize it, I'll do the teaching, Robert. I said, fine. So we had, 50, 70 guys coming out every Thursday morning, non-denominational, went very well. And I became Catholic. And about a year later, I had the opportunity to sit down with then Bishop Amon, now Archbishop Amon in New Orleans, a great, great bishop. A lot of respect for him. And being the person I am, I met with him. Kitty and I had dinner with him. And after a year of being Catholic, I said, Bishop, there's no ministry of men going on here in your diocese. There's nothing happening. And I said, here's what we need to do. I had it all written out on my legal pad. He said, go do it. So we launched the Central Texas Fellowship of Catholic Men in June of 2006. And they've had their 12th annual conference this year. And we have men gathering in 43 parishes in the diocese. So what led me that I became acquainted with other Catholics around the country, men that had ministry to men going on in their dioceses and parishes. And a group of us gathered in June of 2018 to talk about ministry to men. And they said, okay, we're going to talk about this and do something about it. Yeah. And we agreed that we're going to do something about it. So we launched the Catholic Men's Leadership Alliance with the objective of getting ministry to men going in every diocese in North America. Yeah. And
you're doing very well with that. You're way ahead. We have to keep, time is short, but I want to make sure people know how to reach you.
Yes.
How can they reach Heroic Men? How can people reach you?
Yeah, you can go to Heroic Men, HEROIC men.org. HEROIC men.org. And that's where you can find everything that we're doing and what the ministry is doing.
This is very interesting. I'd love to have you back and we can talk more. I think that's about all the time that we have for today. Thank you, Robert, and for your time with us and for what you're doing. You're bringing Christ to the world, and I really thank you for that. Rebecca, as always, thank you. You make it more fun, and it's wonderful to work with you.
Thank you both. And thank you, listeners, for making time for us today. As a reminder, we invite you to visit our show notes for links to items we discussed today. We'll make sure that Heroic Men makes it to the show notes. And we invite you to enroll in our free online course, The Gospel of Work, at www.ciocacenter.com. If you enjoyed this conversation, we hope you will spread the word. Subscribe to Prosper in your favorite podcast app, like us, and give us a good review. And visit our social media accounts to leave feedback and engage with our growing community of listeners.
So thank you, take care. Until next time, we hope you prosper.